Good afternoon. Welcome to the Hamilton County Board of County Commissioners staff meeting of October the 4th. If we could introduce ourselves, that would be great.
Lisa Daria, Deputy Clerk.
Leslie Hervey, Clerk to the Board.
Good afternoon. I'm County Commissioner Denise Treehouse.
Jeff Aludo, County Administrator.
Thank you. Stephanie Summerall Dumas, President of the Board of Commission. We will move forward. We have a short agenda today. I did want to say a word. I just saw a text that a car ran into Alabama Fish Bar. And so we hope that everybody is safe down there. I don't know what street that is, but we pray that everybody is safe with that incident that just happened. So we have our Health Commissioner, Greg Kesterman, is before us for a COVID-19 monkeypox update.
Well, good afternoon, Commissioners. Thank you so much for having me today. I will start off by saying that all of the trends continue in the right direction, and therefore I don't have a bunch to report on since we last met. The first slide is very familiar. Today we're at 105 cases per 100,000, or I'm sorry, 7-day rolling average. We're at 105 cases, so we continue to see a decline in our caseload. When you look at it geographically amongst the county, you can see that kind of is spreading throughout Hamilton County, which is also good news. We're seeing cases drop in virtually every community. We continue as a community to see the BA4 and the BA5 variants being the predominant variants, which is also good news. We're not seeing any new strains, and so we're not anticipating any significant increases at this time. One of the numbers that you've heard me watch closely throughout the pandemic has certainly been hospitalizations and intensive care unit admissions. Those continue to decline. Actually, the last week looks like at maybe even a slightly quicker slope than we've had for the last couple months. Today, we have 127 individuals within the hospital systems, 18 individuals within the ICU, and 3 individuals on ventilators. So that's good news as well. The last slide I have with regards to COVID-19 deals with vaccinations. We continue to have individuals getting vaccinated at our clinics throughout Hamilton County. Our new clinic on Wesley Avenue in Norwood is open. It's real nice space, and we're happy to be serving individuals out of that location for the next year. We continue to see a lot of interest in the fall booster, and generally if you've not had a booster shot within the last 2 months, you're over the age of 12, it is recommended for everyone. So if you've not been boosted yet, we would recommend that you go out and get your booster shot. The last 2 slides that I have today deal with monkeypox. Once again, really no change since we last met, which is fantastic news. I think a couple weeks ago, Hamilton County was at about 14 cases of monkeypox, inclusive of the other 3 health jurisdictions, and that remains the same. We have 14 cases. Ohio has 279, no major increases, and the U.S. sits right around 26,000 cases. Nationally, you can see a very nice decline in daily caseload. Back in the middle of August, we were sitting more than 600 cases per day. Today, nationally, we are at 120 cases per day and declining. So we are certainly heading in the right direction. Our team, the Cincinnati Health Department, continues to offer monkeypox vaccine 1 day a week. We continue to take registrations on our website, and as more vaccine becomes available, we continue to expand the availability to the public. With that, I'll take any questions that you may have.
Thank you so much. Vice President Reese, did you have any questions or comments?
Just had one question. I know it's not in this presentation, but maybe, excuse me, in the future, we were asking about kind of the effects. We're starting seeing long-term effects of those who had COVID and what the needs are from a health perspective. So just wanted to kind of keep an eye on that. I know you had mentioned it to us, which will have an impact on our county and our region.
Okay, certainly.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
I have no questions, but I do have a comment. My mom and I went and got our boosters, and we went to the new Wesley site. It was fantastic. Your staff is so friendly. They just couldn't be more welcoming when we walked in the door, and so it was well laid out. There's plenty of free parking. It's not too far from the Board of Elections, and so again, if you could convey gratitude to your staff, they just were very professional and very welcoming. And my mom, as usual, did fine, no ill impacts. And my arm hurt like crazy for about a day. And I said, Mom, I said, how do you feel? And she's like, oh, I'm fine, I'm out. Yeah, I'm like, oh my gosh. I said, my arm is killing me. And she's like, I don't have any pain at all. I said, okay, all right. But this is characteristic of how she does, and she's 87. So anyway, I just want to also encourage folks to get the booster. It's no sweat, didn't feel it, and it really was very convenient.
Thanks for the feedback, and I'll share with the team.
And we were just talking earlier, I won't call anybody out, but we were talking about how great your staff is. And I just said it starts from the top. So thank you for all you do, too.
Thank you very much.
All righty, let's move forward. Item number 2, Tax Incentive Review Council recommendations. Harry is here.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. I hope that's my microphone. Sorry about that. Harry Blanton with Alloy Economic Development, the county's Economic Development Office. And I have with me here today Ashley Gibson, one of our staff members. And I also want to point out that Greg Jarvis with the County Auditor's Office is here, and he's the auditor's representative on the TIRC, and he is the chair of the TIRC. So we welcome him to have, if he has any comments. So thank you for your time today. This is the annual review of the tax incentives that Hamilton County has approved in the past. For those at home, the TIRC, or the Tax Incentive Review Council, meets annually to review all of the agreements that have been passed by the commissioners to make sure there is compliance with the goals that were stated in their agreements. And the section of the Ohio Revised Code is up on the slide, but it's 5709.85. So every year we like to show you in the aggregate how the programs are performing. So for the Enterprise Zone program, each one of the metrics, real property, personal property, and employment, have all been met and exceeded. So as a program, it's working very well. For the CRA, the Community Investment Area, we also show that all 3 metrics, the real property, personal property, and jobs, have all been exceeded. I will point out, as I do every year, this second metric, the personal property, looks like it's a typo. It says it's 1,686% of the goal, and the reason for that is only one company that reports over $500 million in software every year as one of their investments. That agreement is going to be expiring this year, so next year it'll go back to a more normal percentage. And then also we want to point out that 5 of the agreements have expired this year, so as a result of that, more than $161,000 will go back onto the tax rolls for all the taxing levies, so everyone will start to get those taxes back. And then there are 5 agreements that are still in construction, so those companies have some time to meet their goals. One thing that's really important this year that we wanted to point out is the effect of COVID and the pandemic on the companies. We heard from a lot of them that they were having a hard time, even though they had open job positions, finding people. They also, obviously, during the pandemic, had people who went on unemployment. They had to shut down their companies and their stores. People were working from home. So that did have an impact. And so the TRC took that into account when reviewing the different situations for each company. However, there were 2, I'm sorry, before I get to that. So these are the status of each of the agreements. So these are the agreements that were approved throughout the county that were continued as they are. There's one that we're going to be asking you to modify, and that's down to core. I will explain the reason for that in just a second. And then there are 2 that are expiring in Evendale, Kinetic Vision, and White Castle. And just so people know, that's not a White Castle restaurant, that's a White Castle manufacturing plant. So, with the CRA, the TRC is recommending continuation of all of the agreements except the 3 that expired, and that includes that one that I was talking about with the really expensive software. So there are 2 companies, though, that we wanted to highlight that fell below their goals, not only just during the pandemic, but prior to the pandemic. And so because of their consistent inability to meet the goals, the staff of Alloy recommended modification of their agreements. As every year, the TRC can take into account our recommendation as well as the local community and then the companies and also the school district's input. So in this case, both of these companies, Hoarder Investment and G.J. Burkhart, were out of compliance for more than 3 years, so we did recommend a modification. In the case of Hoarder Investment, as you can see over the last 3 years, and I will point out that Hoarder's original goals were 35 jobs retained, 30 jobs created, so they were supposed to create or have a total of 65 jobs. In 2019, because of their inability to meet those goals, we did recommend reducing the term of the agreement to be more consistent with what they achieved. And the commissioners, you did agree to reduce it down to 8 years. So I did want to point out that that did occur back in 2019. But as you can see from this chart, they have continued to lose jobs. Not only do they not retain any more of the jobs that they originally had, but they've lost jobs, and they have not created the 30 jobs. So we recommended reducing their term from 8 to 6 years and reducing their job goals to be consistent with that. The TRC decided to take into account the local community's perspective, and the community did, and the school district also recommended continuation of the agreement. So as commissioners, you can choose to go with the TRC recommendation, you can choose to go with the staff recommendation, or you can come up with your own recommendation. It's up to you. Fry Fastening, also known as G.J. Burkhart in Forest Park. Once again, a company that for a number of years has been unable to meet the job creation goal. And so we are recommending, we did recommend a reduction from 75% to 60% on their tax incentive. And again, the TRC did take into account the community's perspective and decided to go with, to go against our recommendation. So I'm just pointing those out for you so that you can decide whether you want to go with either recommendation. And then down to Core, the company in Lockland, they're asking for an amendment, and it's a very simple amendment. They have a new ownership in the real estate, so the auditor will not give them the tax incentive if the right name is not on the agreement. And since they have a new owner in terms of the real estate, we're just asking for you to approve an amendment to their agreement to add that new owner. So they've met all their goals in investment and jobs, so there's no problems with their performance. So, and that's it. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much. I mean, it's impressive that this program is working. There are a couple that are not meeting the goals, which happens, and most of them are following and exceeding the expectations. So I just would like to know, you know, Alloy had some modifications which they seem realistic and good modifications, but just more interested in TIRC recommendation that they did not agree with the modification. So if someone can speak to that here or not?
Greg, I think that Greg has told me to go ahead and explain it, but basically the community is allowed to come in and I think the TRC gives great deference to the local community because they're usually getting income tax or, you know, they're the most impacted by the project. In this case, both in Horder and in G.J. Burkhart, the community did come in and said that they wanted to continue the agreement as they were. In Sims Township's case, I think their major point was that because they're a township, they don't collect an income tax, so the jobs aren't as important to them as the investment. So, and also the school district supported their position. In the case of Forest Park, I guess they felt like the job fall wasn't that great and that they wanted to continue to support the company. So I shouldn't speak on their behalf, but since I'm the only one here to speak on their behalf, I can. There is Chris from Forest Park here if you would like to speak, Chris.
Hi, Chris. Good to see you.
Hey, Commissioner, how are you?
Good.
Chris Anderson with the City of Forest Park, and I do want to thank Harry and Ashley for inviting me to come to the meeting and speak if need be. And the position of Forest Park really is twofold. First of all, G.J. Burkhart is not done growing. They have been in talks with us about expanding their building, which they bought enough land to do and have, you know, a footprint to do that. So that is something that we see as pending in the next year or two. And then secondly, this is the last year of the agreement. So this reduction, while it would have a small effect on the company, it's a minor change overall, and we just thought it would be better to keep the agreement as it was, let it expire next year, and then we can go from there.
Okay.
Thank you.
So much. Appreciate it. Vice President Reese.
Thank you for the presentation. Just take one step back, I'm trying to understand. On the Hamilton County Tax Incentive Review Council, Alloy is representing the economic development,
We staff your Economic Development Office, so we're just staff. The TRC appointees, there's 7 of them. 3 are appointed by the county commissioners, 1 is appointed by the county auditor, 2 are appointed by the local community, and then the 7th person is the school district.
Okay, great. So I'm putting my marketing hat back on. I've said this once before. I hope I don't have to say it again. I know that you guys have a new rebrand, Alloy, but I want people to know I'm breaking down silos, and I want to make sure that they know that you're representing Hamilton County Economic Development Department. Now, we're not hiring inside, we got a contract. So I've kind of said this before to the administrator, in terms of our branding, I just think it should be Hamilton County Economic Development powered by Alloy. And I've said it several times in several different meetings, venues, et cetera. And I just think, especially at a time we're looking at rebranding and those kind of things, but I just think it needs to be identified that we do have an economic development arm. Of course, you have the contract. So I want to put that on the table and on the record again. I'm going to ask the administrator, I know you said this was something you were working on. I hope we can get this resolved for the next presentation. Moving to the presentation, I joined with President Dumas in saying that certainly this report is great, and seeing that people were able to exceed the numbers at a time when the economy got hit so hard with COVID. I do have similar, I'm not making a decision today, but I do have similar concerns that one of the things that we hear a lot, at least I know I hear a lot, is that we give incentives, the government gives incentives to a lot of businesses, and we have it under the auspices that we're gonna create all these jobs. And then people are very concerned about, do we go and actually look and see were any jobs created? And what jobs, what zip codes? And so I think that we do have to make sure that we're sending a message that if you don't hit it, now we understand COVID and those kind of things, so I'm willing to make some adjustments. The economy is tough, but, you know, we can't just, you know, if this company does expand, they'll probably be back for some type of incentive. So I just want to make sure, it's nothing personal against the company, but I think we need to have a balance of being able to allow the taxpayers to know, those who have been critical of tax incentives and those kind of things, to know that we are monitoring and not just looking, but there is an expectation. And if the expectation is not met, there has to be some type of adjustment, penalty, if you will, because we're starting to see that the public, at least the ones I've talked to, have had concerns about, you know, I'm paying all these taxes, and then they show up and they get a tax break, and then they don't even create a job or what have you.
Right.
So we want to have the balance of flexibility for circumstances beyond their control, but we just can't be the rubber stamp of, you know, you just say you're going to create some jobs and then you don't really do it. So I was just interested in your presentation that, one, you looked at a company that was not doing it prior to COVID. Because the first thing I thought about was, well, COVID, you know, it's tough. But if you're saying that there's some type of pattern, then there probably does need to be some type of adjustment, just from a messaging standpoint of taxpayers who are saying, I'm paying everything. And then you come in and people ain't paying, and then they're not creating a job. So I just want to put that out there, not saying the decision that I made, but would like to get more information and seeing how we balance the two.
Sure. Thank you for your comments. And I will make sure on future presentations that we highlight Economic Development Office over Alloy. Sure.
Thank you. Commissioner Dreehouse.
Thank you. Thank you, Harry, for being here. So what year, and I too want to recognize that most companies did really well, and I think these results are really very encouraging because those percentages are very high. But so with Horder Investment Management, LLC, what year are they in with the agreement?
So let me pull it up. I know that, I think it was, I need my glasses. Getting old. I just became a grandpa, so it's obvious. For the first time, so it was really cool. So Horder, their agreement was approved 2013, and I think they were doing okay until 2018, and that's when they started going down. They started losing all the jobs that they had created, and then they started losing jobs that they had retained. And they told us that they went to a lot of 1099 positions. The pandemic hit them, but I think this was even before the pandemic. So they just weren't continuing to not only create the jobs, but retain the jobs that they had there before.
Okay,
And I should point out that since Chris was here, we invited both communities to attend and both companies so that they could speak on their own behalf, but
okay.
Chris showed up, but the others didn't, yeah.
Yeah, so then how far in are they? So it was an 8-year agreement.
So let's see. Well, it was a 10-year agreement originally. So they, it was approved back in 2013. It was a 10-year agreement, went down to 8. So I think the recommendation to go to 6 was that would basically end the agreement.
Wouldn't 8,
Now.
I mean, it sounds like they're bumping up on,
They're given 3-year construction period or project period. So they have out until 2016 to finish their project. And any investment they make within that 3 years gets 10 years of abatement.
I see. Okay, so they're not bumping up against the 8 so much. All right, so, yeah, I think what concerns me about this one, not so much the other one, because the other one did create new jobs. It's not to the level that we hoped it would be, but there are new jobs being created, and that's the whole point of this, right, is this investment in people in the community and facilities. So the second one has not created new jobs, 2019, 0, 2020, 0, 2021, 0. So if they're going to 1099 employees, that's a business decision they're making, but this incentive is not for that. And so I am concerned about this one.
Okay.
And would be really curious to know what the rationale was, because, the members of the TIRC, I think we need to recognize that they are a group of expert people making decisions. Was it a unanimous decision?
I believe so. And like I said, I think they really give deference to the local community, and since Sims Township came in and said that they were fine with it, they gave a lot of deference to
But it's not
them.
their incentive, it's our incentive,
I
so,
I agree with you.
I think,
And that's why we highlighted it, so you could make a decision based on our staff recommendation versus the TRC.
okay. So, yeah, I need to take a little more time with this one, and better understand the rationale of the TIRC members. I mean, Greg, I don't know if you've got any insight, or at least hear what they heard, because, if it's super compelling, that's one thing, but I am not compelled by what's on this page to continue this agreement the way it was going, because it hasn't had the intended impact, right, on jobs. So maybe we could, I don't know what the time frame is here, but if we could
We have
get
time.
more information, perhaps from either a member of the TIRC or the community,
Okay.
I think that would be helpful. At least it
can-
would help me better
Yes,
understand
we
this.
will try to get that to you.
Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
just a brief question. Harry, do you have with you the total, we list the jobs, do you have the total investment
For Horder?
for
Yep.
Horder and Fry Fastening?
Sure. So for Fry Fastening, their investment goal was $2 million, I'm sorry, $700,000 in personal property and $2 million in real property. They exceeded both of those goals. So Fry exceeded their investment goals. And then Horder originally agreed to invest $300,000 in personal property and $3.5 million in real property. They exceeded both of those goals as well. So their personal property was $562,000 and their real property investment was $5,291,000.
Thank you.
So, Madam President, may I just follow up? So that information would be very helpful as we're trying to sort through this, because as the administrators pointed out, it's not just about the jobs, but also the investment. So that helps round this out a little bit. But I still would like to better understand what the committee heard. Also, Harry, your recommendation then is to modify the agreement, reduce the term from 8 to 6 years, which I think you just said would,
I believe that will basically end the agreement.
so it
yeah.
ends the agreement. And so the reduction in the job commitment is, neither here nor there, really, if the agreement ends. So, okay, yeah, I just need to sort through this. I'm just not quite sure on this one. Thank you.
Thank you, and with Horder, I'm also concerned that you said you invited both companies to come, only one came. I'm concerned about that, because if you're gonna have a modification, that you fight for what you think is right, even though there was input somewhere else. Really, they should have come here, in my opinion. And then the other thing on Burkhardt, I was just wondering, you had mentioned modify the agreement. Is that because they did not reach the appropriate number of jobs?
Yeah, so they made their investment, they did retain their jobs, but they didn't meet the job creation goal. So we didn't think it was quite as severe of an issue, so we wanted to just reduce the percentage.
Yeah. Okay.
Can I have a follow-up?
Sure, uh-huh.
Just want to understand this. So you said they exceeded their goal in property investment. And this tax incentive, there's no property tax, or is there a property tax?
So we abate a certain percentage of their property tax, so they pay a certain percentage and they are forgiven a certain percentage.
Right. So even with, I was just looking at that, and then the jobs is the incentive to say, you're going to create this many jobs, so we'll give you X amount of dollars, we'll give you X amount of percentage off on your property tax.
Right, we take all of that into account. There are other things that we take into account as well. Are they high-paying jobs? Do they provide benefits? There's a lot of things that we look into, and then come up with a percentage in a term based on those numbers.
Yeah. So or even when we say, well, they got a higher investment, probably change orders and, cost of materials went up and what have you.
Sure.
Not trying to discount that part. So you have a, real estate deal, but you still got an abatement component to it. So you, and then part of that abatement is high paying, salary type of jobs and, like you said, benefits and those things. So we got zero on the other end. So I do think that, I didn't want to just leave that out there. Of course, they did invest, but they also got percentage don't pay property taxes.
Right.
So we lose on both ends. We're trying to get, more jobs, bring more, we're trying to use these things to bring jobs. And most of the time, these deals come, been seeing them for 20 years. It's always, we're going to bring these jobs. And as soon as you stamp off, you get a break. Then, that's what people complain about. Do we oversee it? And there's their oversight. So that's good for people to know today that there is oversight. And I appreciate you bringing this to our attention.
Thank you.
Thank
Can
you.
I ask?
And what's our timeline on this? You said we have time. What does that mean?
Yeah, we just need to get it done. I think we can, if we can get it done by the end of October, that would be okay.
Okay. You
Can I
wanted
ask
to say
another follow-up? Yeah, so just to this broader question about the incentives to begin with, correct me if I'm wrong, but the incentive is to encourage retention of jobs, creating new jobs. So if a company is creating new jobs, but they're 1099 jobs, and so they're not showing up on this metrics because we're trying to incentivize, the jobs within the organization, it seems, it's counterintuitive to me that with an incentive kind of hanging out there for this company, and they're hiring people, but not hiring them in a way in which they would show up here, it's as if maybe they're not overly concerned about this, and any kind of clawback or any kind of, ending the agreement. So I think that's something I just wanted to note, because we are trying to create incentives here for certain kind of behaviors with the companies, and if they're not doing it and really kind of even going around it, it seems that this incentive isn't hitting the mark. And I'm just thinking through the incentive now. So anyway, all right, I will talk to you offline about some of these.
Sure. I think this is a unique circumstance with the 1099 issue. I don't think this is something that a lot of the companies are doing. This is we were told this by Horder that they had done that. And I agree with you, as a community, the whole purpose of these agreements is to gain benefits, jobs, income taxes, property taxes, so that we can provide the services to our community with those taxes. So if you're going to give an abatement, you want to see the benefits to the community otherwise with job creation and income tax and things like that. So now, in this case, Horder is in a township, so the community doesn't receive an income tax, so that's why their perspective is a little bit different. But when you look at it globally or as an economic development official, you still want to have great jobs for your citizens and, you know, ones with good benefits and things of that. And that's the kind of companies that we want to incentivize. And when they change that, then it makes it a different equation.
Okay, and I've heard discussion about possibly having some people come in and talk about Horder and maybe the community or whatever. We certainly can do that for a staff meeting. I don't have a need to do that because I think they should have been here today. But if we need clarity to make a decision, we certainly can do that. Is that something you don't need? So maybe you could. Okay.
Okay, we'll share any additional information we can get to you.
Yeah, okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Thank you, commissioners.
Any further business to come before the board? Hearing none, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Commissioner Summer Dumas?
Yes.
Commissioner Reese?
Yes.
Commissioner Dreehouse?
Yes?
Thank you.